Hello, my name is Thomas Vick. I am the attorney at Vick Law PC, and I wanted to discuss with you today the topic of how to protect the house. And in order to do so, I want to share my screen with you so that you understand the topic and so you can follow along with me. Again, the topic for today's discussion is how to protect the house. Whenever clients call me regarding what to do with the house and what to do as far as Medicaid planning is concerned, usually their main concern is the house. And so hopefully this video will be helpful so that others may understand what the Medicaid rules are. And first of all, to understand the topic of the house, we need to understand something about the Medicaid eligibility rules. There are principally two tests that have to be met in order for somebody to have Medicaid pay for their long-term care. The first one is the resource test, and the second one is the income test. I've discussed the income test in other videos, and I point you to the other videos um, of Vic Law for you to understand a little bit more about the income test. But as far as the resource test is concerned, for a single person to be eligible, his or her resources must be under $2,000. If you have more than $2,000, you're rich. If you're a married couple with both spouses receiving services, $3,000 is the limit on resources. And then if you have a community spouse, in other words, a healthy spouse and a sick spouse, there are differing limits depending upon how much in the way of resources the couple has. But generally speaking, $2,000 or $3,000 is the limit. And interestingly, and this is where we get into the rules regarding the house is exempt as long as it is the principal residence of the recipient, the spouse, the minor children, adult disabled or blind children. And so when a person is in the home but applies for Medicaid waiver services, that their principal residence is the house is going to be exempt. So that's a comforting thing to individuals that first find that out. But perhaps it's not possible for an individual to be at home and they have to be in a nursing home. Medicaid is allowed to ask the doctor um, to evaluate the patient to see if the patient will actually, in all likelihood, ever make it back to the house. And if not, then the house is no longer exempt. Um, if the person is not able to return home, does not intend to return home, the house is no longer exempt. And then the question is, well, how do I make it exempt again? Well, the answer to that is you can put the house up for sale or put it up to for rent. And essentially what that means is that it becomes income producing property. And income producing property is exempt as an asset, but it brings in income. And so we have an income issue that we would have to deal with. But generally speaking, as long as the house is the principal residence of the recipient, the spouse, the minor children, adult disabled children, or blind children, the house is exempt. If that's no longer possible, if it's no longer the principal residence of any of those individuals, then the house is no longer exempt and it has to be put up for sale or for rent. But there are some exempt transfers that are possibilities. First of all, the house can be transferred to children that are under the age of 21 who are blind or are disabled. Another exempt transfer is to a child residing in the home for at least 2 years who provided care for a parent. And then also uh, a sibling who has an equity interest in the home and who resided in the home for at least 1 year. That is also an exempt transfer. And so one of the more common ones might be that the child has resided in the adult home in the home for at least 2 years uh, and provided care for the parent. This is a situation where the adult child moves into the home of the parent and takes care of the parent with the idea, and the parent is able to stay at home rather than a nursing home because of that move by the adult child. That's going to be an exempt transfer if the parent transfers the home to that particular child. And so that can be a really helpful planning tip. But if you don't have any of those options available, if you don't have a child under age 21 blind or disabled, you don't have an adult child who was the caretaker for the parent, you don't have a sibling who has lived in the home for at least 1 year, then the house is no longer exempt. And again, the house has to be put up for sale or put up for rent. Um, and so if we don't want those possibilities to take place, then maybe we need to do some planning ahead of time. And what I often encourage clients to do is to establish a Medicaid Asset Protection Trust. A Medicaid Asset Protection Trust is uh, a legal entity that a person will set up, and once property is placed into the trust, then it starts the time clock, and we're trying to make it 5 years uh, to safety. So what our strategy would be to put the house into the Medicaid Asset Protection Trust, and then we hopefully make it 5 years, and everything that is in the trust for 5 years is protected. And uh, we can do that without losing all of the control and all of the access to the trust property. We can retain a right to occupy the house, and we can retain an income stream from the property in the trust. And so we were able to retain some control. We were able to retain some access to the property that's in the trust. And then also we get to determine who the trustee is going to be. And then we also determine who the beneficiaries are. And by we, I mean the client. The client determines who the trustee will be and can retain a limited power of appointment to change the beneficiaries of the trust. And so if you have a child that is serving as trustee and then the child doesn't uh, do what the client wants the trustee to do, we can get a different trustee, and we can even change beneficiaries so that the trustee will be kind of motivated to do what the client wants them to do. And then there'll be a plan in place to return assets if Medicaid is necessary. And I don't want to get into that too much right now, but the idea is we can put the house in a Medicaid Asset Protection Trust, and that property can be protected uh, once we make it 5 years. If we don't make it 5 years, we can get it back into the hands of the client, and the client can do further Medicaid planning and still do a lot to protect the house. So that's all that I wanted to discuss with you today. If you want to set up an appointment with our law office, you can set up an initial consultation. We'll give you an intake questionnaire and get some information about your family, and then you'll come in, meet with the attorney, and then after that meeting with the attorney, then we will go ahead and provide you a written evaluation in the form of an opinion letter regarding your case. So I appreciate you taking the time to listen to this this video, and if you have any questions, feel free to get in touch with our law office.